Welcome to another video by Scrapbook Centrale. I guess I'm into tag these days because today we're making another tag. This is a Tim Holtz inspired technique and it's called Shattered Distress Stains. Let me show you what you're going to need for this project. You will definitely need your craft mat for this technique. You'll need a heat tool, a craft tag such as these from Inkessentials by Ranger, grunge paper or grunge board, this stamp set from the Tim Holtz collection called Warehouse District number CMS 124. You'll also need these two die sets from Tim Holtz Alterations Movers and Shapers, and this one is the mini tattered leaf set and this is the mini tattered floral set, archival jet black ink, vintage photo distress ink, as well as wild honey distress ink. You'll need ink applicators, distress crackle paint in clear rock candy, liquid pearls in bisque. The distress stains we're going to use today are forest moss, crushed olive, wild honey, dried marigold, and mustard seed. You'll also need some glossy accents, Tombow Mono multi liquid glue, some mini glue dots, and 16 inches of vanilla seam binding or silk ribbon. For today's project, you will need to die cut one of these flowers and two of these leaves out of grunge board or grunged paper. I went ahead and cut my pieces, and I have here the tattered flower. And what you want to do is apply a medium thickness of distress crackle paint. Make sure you have a good coverage all over your piece. And you want to set this aside to dry for 1 to 2 hours. So now that my piece has dried, you can see that the crackle is already forming, but you can't really see it well. You'll see it more when we start applying the distress stain. I'm going to do this leaf, and I will use for this the crushed olive and forest moss. And the object of this is to saturate as much as possible your grunge board. The more ink you'll put down, the more it'll seep through the cracks of the crackle paint. And I'm going to go ahead and use a bit of the forest moss here and there. As you can see, as my piece starts to dry, the stain falls into the cracks and it gives you that beautiful crackled effect. And now I'm going to dry it with the heat tool. This step of drying is very important because this is what's going to bake the stain into the crackle medium. If you feel that your leaf is too light, you can go ahead and add more darker colors and heat set again. Now we're going to work on our flower, and for this we'll use the mustard seed, dried marigold, and wild honey. And I'm going to put down my lightest color, which is mustard seed, and I'll be doing this randomly, but again I want to really saturate my flower. Next I'm going to put dried marigold. And then I'm going to add wild honey. And once again, heat set that. It's looking a little bit too yellow, so I'm going to go over with the wild honey a second time. So now you should have your pieces that look like that, and as you can see, you can really tell the crackle because the stain has had time to seep into the grunge board between the cracks. You could leave it like that if you prefer, but I think that when you add glossy accents over this crackle medium, it really makes the colors pop even more and makes the cracks more prominent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer of glossy accents on my 3 pieces. I don't want too much of a thick layer because I don't want it to take long to dry, but I recommend that you leave it for about, I would say, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour if you decide to add the crackle medium, just because if it's too sticky and you handle it, you might leave some fingerprints on your piece. Now here I wanted to show you the difference between a piece that has been accented with glossy accents and this one not. So you can tell the difference. This one here, the colors really pop, whereas this one is more subtle. While our pieces are drying, we're going to work on our tag directly. So we're going to first stamp our sentiment from the Tim Holtz set, and it is this one here. And we're going to center this. And we're going to distress our tag. So we're going to start with wild honey and our distressing tool. And we're going to go around all our tag, but leaving a spotlight around our sentiment. And now we're going to do our vintage photo. And we'll go around the edges, but we won't go so far in, just to make it look more aged. And when I do this, I always like to go around my tag at a 45-degree angle to redefine the edges. And that makes the colors pop like this. We have to place our elements on our tag, and these have dried. So as you can see here, they're really shiny and gorgeous and rich looking. So I'm going to play with my flower and the leaves to see where I want it glued down. And I think I kind of want it that way here. So what I'm going to be doing is using my Tombow glue. I'll leave the other pieces there and I'll just remove this piece and add my glue, just so I know where to put it back, working one piece at a time. This. And now I've got a pretty good idea of where my other leaf is going, so I'm going to glue that one down as well. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop my flower, because if I use the liquid glue to glue over here, the only part where it's going to glue down is actually at the junction of the leaves, and that wouldn't be solid, not as solid as I want it to be. I'm going to put my foam adhesive right on my tag, and that way I know that I won't hit any of these branches. There's only 2 things left to do. The first one we're going to do is we're going to do our bow for the top here. This is how I make my bow. I wrap my ribbon around my fingers like this, and I make a cross like so, and poke my ribbon ends between my fingers like this, like so, pulling from underneath, and then I'm going to tie a knot from underneath and pull, and secure this with a glue dot. Place my bow right here, and my tails are too long, so I'm just going to cut them. Our last and final step, and this is why we leave it at the end, because we're going to use liquid pearls and it has to dry at least for about, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes. I would leave it for half an hour. And I'm going to dot my sentence here. I'll zoom in. And I also want to add some dots in the middle of my flower. Like this. And I'm just going to put a row of dots at the end of my tag here. There's my row of dots at the bottom. Leave that to dry and we are done. And here's our finished tag. I love this technique. I think it's just absolutely stunning. And I wanted to show you another example that Natalie made using the butterflies. And as you can see, you can give it all kinds of shades that you want. She used some burgundy, I believe, and there's some blue in there. And the whole feel of the tag is completely different, but just as beautiful. So I hope you'll give this technique a try. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And we will see you next week with a different technique. We're not going to do a tag next week. So enjoy, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.